Pregnant with triplets, she collapsed at CEO ex-husband's wedding. Only he could save their lives. Triplets, Vivian? Were you ever going to tell me? I came to the wedding to tell you. Am I wedding to another woman? I thought you deserved to know before you disappeared into your new life completely. Before what, Viv? Why didn't you tell me you were carrying my children? Because the last time I tried to tell you something important, you transferred money to my account and signed divorce papers without even listening. These are my babies. My blood. And you would have let me marry another woman without knowing they existed. Your family made it clear I was never good enough for the Blackwell name. Why would they want my children to carry it? Have you ever stood face to face with the person who shattered your heart? Have you ever carried a secret so heavy it felt like it would crush you? Tonight, we're diving into a story about the choices that haunt us and the moments that change everything. What happens when pride becomes our prison? When the fear of vulnerability costs us everything we truly want? Vivian thought she was protecting herself by staying silent, but her silence nearly killed them all. Can love survive betrayal? Can forgiveness heal wounds that run deeper than blood? Stay with me, because this story will challenge everything you believe about second chances. If stories about redemption and the power of love speak to your heart, hit that like button right now. And if you believe in second chances, subscribe to Lux Love Chronicles with Mr. Wentworth for more stories that will restore your faith in love. The Blackwell estate had never looked more magnificent. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across marble floors, while 200 of Manhattan's elite mingled in designer gowns and custom tuxedos. White orchids and baby's breath created an ethereal canopy over the outdoor ceremony space, where Matthias Blackwell would marry Cordelia von Habsburg in what society magazines were calling the wedding of the century. But standing at the edge of the manicured gardens, clutching an invitation she'd never expected to receive, Vivian Hartley felt like she was witnessing her own funeral. 7 months pregnant with his triplets, she pressed a trembling hand to her swollen belly as she watched the man she'd once called her soulmate adjust his platinum cufflinks with the same meticulous care he'd once used to trace her naked spine. Don't go, her best friend Rachel had pleaded earlier that morning. What possible good can come from this? But Rachel didn't understand. For 6 months, Vivian had carried this secret like a stone in her chest. 3 babies, Gabriel, Lucas, and Sophia, she'd already named them, growing inside her, conceived during their last passionate night together before their bitter divorce was finalized. A night that was supposed to be goodbye forever. She tried to tell him she was pregnant during those first few weeks, but every time she'd worked up the courage to call, she'd remembered his exact words the last time they'd spoken about children. Maybe someday, Vivian, but not now. My company needs my full attention. A baby would complicate everything. That conversation had been about the possibility of children. This was about the reality of 3 of them. The ceremony music began, Pachelbel's Canon in D, the same piece they'd chosen for their own wedding 4 years ago. Vivian's heart clenched as she watched Matthias take his place at the altar, devastatingly handsome in his midnight blue tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled. Those piercing blue eyes that had undone her so many times now focused on another woman walking down the aisle. Cordelia von Habsburg was everything Vivian wasn't. Blonde where Vivian was brunette, tall and willowy where Vivian was petite and currently round with pregnancy. Old money where Vivian came from a middle-class family in Ohio. Most importantly, Cordelia had her parents' approval, something Vivian had never managed to earn despite 2 years of marriage. She's not one of us, darling, Matthias's mother had said during their divorce proceedings. Perhaps this is for the best. The irony wasn't lost on her now. The Blackwell family had gotten exactly what they wanted, Matthias married to someone of their social standing. They just didn't know that Vivian carried the next generation of Blackwell heirs beneath her heart. As the ceremony concluded and guests moved toward the reception ballroom, Vivian forced herself to follow. She'd come this far. She couldn't turn back now. The grand ballroom of the Blackwell estate was a masterpiece of architecture and wealth. Soaring ceilings painted with cherubs and clouds, walls lined with priceless artwork, and French doors opening onto terraced gardens where fountains sparkled under strings of fairy lights. Vivian accepted a glass of sparkling cider from a passing waiter, her hand shaking slightly as she surveyed the crowd. She knew many of these faces had once been welcomed into their circle as Matthias's wife. Now she was invisible, just another guest among hundreds. Vivian? Vivian Hartley? She turned to find James Morrison, Matthias's former business partner, approaching with genuine surprise and warmth in his expression. James, hello. She managed a smile, her free hand instinctively moving to her stomach. My God, look at you. You're positively glowing. His eyes dropped to her obvious pregnancy. Congratulations. I had no idea you'd remarried. I haven't, she replied quietly, watching his expression shift from confusion to understanding. Oh my. James glanced across the ballroom toward where Matthias was accepting congratulations from well-wishers. Does he know? Before Vivian could answer, the room erupted in applause as the newlyweds took the floor for their first dance. She watched, mesmerized despite herself, as Matthias pulled Cordelia into his arms with practiced grace. He'd held her like that once. Had whispered promises in her ear while they swayed to music in their penthouse apartment, her head on his shoulder, his hands spanning her waist like she was something precious and fragile. I love you, Viv, he'd murmured one night as they danced in their kitchen, barefoot and laughing, her silk robe barely covering her body. I want to give you everything, the world, the stars, babies with your beautiful eyes. But that was before his company went public, before success changed him, before he decided that love was a luxury he couldn't afford. The memory hit her like a physical blow, and suddenly the room was spinning. The champagne flutes in other guests' hands caught the light like tiny suns, blinding her. The babies, inside her seemed to sense her distress, their movements becoming more agitated. Vivian, are you all right? James's concerned voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. She tried to answer, tried to reassure him, but pain lanced through her abdomen with surgical precision. Something was wrong, terribly, horribly wrong. No, she whispered, one hand gripping James's arm while the other clutched her belly. Something's not. The champagne flute slipped from her fingers, crystal shattering against marble as the world tilted dangerously. Through the opulent ballroom's blur, she saw him, Matthias, still radiant in his custom tuxedo as he spun his bride, unaware that his past and future were colliding in a cascade of broken glass and desperate prayers. Help! James shouted as Vivian swayed on her feet. Someone help! The ballroom erupted in gasps and concerned murmurs as guests turned toward the commotion. Vivian felt herself falling, the elegant gown she'd chosen with such care becoming a pool of emerald silk around her as darkness crept in from the edges of her vision. But through it all, she heard his voice, that beloved, familiar voice that had haunted her dreams for months. Vivian. The last thing she saw before unconsciousness claimed her was Matthias pushing through the crowd, his face a mask of shock and desperate concern, reaching for her with the same hands that had just been holding another woman. Time moved like honey as Matthias watched the impossible unfold before his eyes. Vivian, crumpling to the ballroom floor while 300 wedding guests stood frozen in shock. Call 911. He roared, abandoning protocol, abandoning his new bride, abandoning everything except the woman who'd once been his entire world. His knees hit the marble hard as he gathered her unconscious form against his chest, her face pale as moonlight against his dark jacket. Her hair, longer now than when they were married, spilled over his arms like liquid copper. That's when he saw it, the unmistakable swell of her belly beneath the flowing fabric of her dress. Pregnant. Heavily, obviously pregnant. Sir, please step back. A paramedic's voice cut through his haze, but Matthias couldn't move, couldn't process anything beyond the woman in his arms and the mathematical impossibility of what he was seeing. Sir, we need to check her vitals. Are you family? I'm her husband, Matthias said automatically, the words feeling both foreign and completely natural. Ex-husband, corrected a sharp voice behind him. He turned to see Cordelia standing there in her wedding gown, her expression a carefully controlled mask of aristocratic displeasure. We're married now, remember? The paramedic looked between them, confusion evident. Sir, we need to know, are you the father of her baby? Matthias looked down at Vivian's unconscious face, at the hands he remembered trailing down his chest in the heat of passion, at the lips that had whispered his name like a prayer in the darkness of their shared bed. The math was simple, 7 months pregnant, 9 months since their divorce papers were filed, 9 months since their last night together. Yes, he said, his voice raw with certainty and dawning realization. I'm the father. The ambulance ride to Manhattan Presbyterian Hospital passed in a blur of sirens and medical jargon. Matthias held Vivian's hand while paramedics worked around them, checking her blood pressure, monitoring the baby's heartbeats, plural, the paramedic had corrected with raised eyebrows. Multiples? Matthias had asked, his world tilting further off its axis. Definitely. 3 distinct heartbeats. She's carrying triplets. Triplets. 3 babies. His babies. How long has she been unconscious? He asked the paramedic, thumb stroking across Vivian's knuckles in a gesture that felt as natural as breathing. About 15 minutes. Her vitals are stable, but we need to determine what caused the collapse. Pregnancy complications can be serious, especially with multiples. Matthias closed his eyes, memories flooding back. Their last fight, when he'd accused her of trying to trap him with talks of starting a family. The way she'd looked at him, like he'd struck her, when he'd said their timing was all wrong, that his company needed his full attention. I don't need this distraction right now, Vivian, he'd said, and the words tasted like ash in his memory. Maybe after the IPO, but not now. She'd left that night, filed for divorce 2 weeks later, and he'd let her go, convinced himself it was for the best, that he was protecting both of them from a marriage that couldn't survive his ambition. Now, watching her pale face as machines monitored her unconscious form, he realized he'd been protecting himself from the only thing that had ever truly mattered. The hospital room was sterile and cold, nothing like the warm sanctuary they'd once shared in their penthouse overlooking Central Park. Vivian stirred against crisp, white sheets, consciousness returning slowly like sunrise over water. The first thing she registered was his presence, that familiar masculine scent of sandalwood and ambition that had always made her weak in the knees. The second was the steady beeping of monitors and the uncomfortable pressure of an 4 in her arm. Don't move. Matthias's voice was velvet and steel, just like she remembered. The doctor says you need complete rest. Her eyes fluttered open to find him sitting beside her bed, still in his wedding tuxedo but disheveled now, bow tie hanging loose around his neck, his dark hair mussed as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. The sight of him, so close she could touch him, so far away it felt like looking at him through glass, made her chest tight with emotions she'd spent months trying to bury. The babies, she whispered, instinctively placing protective hands over her belly. Are fighting like champions, he said softly, and she caught the ghost of a smile. 3 strong heartbeats, according to the doctors. Triplets, Vivian. The question hung in the air between them, loaded with everything they'd never said, everything they'd gotten wrong. Were you ever going to tell me? His voice was carefully controlled, but she could hear the hurt underneath. Vivian struggled to sit up straighter, wincing at the 4-pull. I came to the wedding to tell you. His eyes, those devastating blue eyes that had undone her so many times, searched her face with an intensity that made her feel exposed. At my wedding to another woman. I thought you deserved to know before. She trailed off, unable to voice the painful truth. Before what, Viv? The old nickname sent shivers down her spine. How many times had he breathed that against her throat while his hands worked magic on her trembling body? How many mornings had she woken to him whispering it against her temple as sunlight painted their bedroom golden? Before you disappeared into your new life completely, she finished quietly. Matthias stood abruptly, moving to the window where the city sprawled below them in a carpet of lights. His shoulders were rigid with tension, and she could see the conflict playing out in his reflection against the glass. What happened to us, Vivian? He asked without turning around. We used to talk about everything. We used to be partners. Partners don't make unilateral decisions about their futures, she replied, old hurt creeping into her voice. Partners don't say things like, maybe someday, when their wife brings up having children. I was building something, he said, finally turning to face her. The company was at a crucial stage. The company was always at a crucial stage, Vivian interrupted, months of suppressed anger finally finding voice. There was always another deal, another investor, another reason why we had to wait for our life to begin. So you decided to start that life without me? The accusation hit like a slap. I didn't decide anything. These babies weren't planned, Matthias. They were conceived the night before our divorce was finalized, remember? Our last night together when you said, "When I said I loved you," he finished quietly. "When I said I couldn't imagine my life without you." The memory hung between them, potent and painful. That night had been desperate and tender and earth-shattering. A goodbye that felt like dying. A connection so intense it had left them both shaking. "And then you married someone else," Vivian whispered. "Had," he corrected, moving closer to her bed. "I had a wife. For about 3 hours." Her eyes widened. "Matthias, what did you do? What I should have done months ago." He sat on the edge of her bed, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "I never stopped loving you, Vivian. Marrying Cordelia was supposed to be practical, strategic. Your family's approval," she murmured, remembering the constant pressure from his aristocratic parents who'd never thought a middle-class art curator was worthy of their son. "My family's approval means nothing without you." His gaze was intense enough to ignite fires. "These babies are babies. They're a gift I never thought I'd receive." "Matthias." "No, let me finish." He reached for her hand, his fingers warm and familiar against hers. "I was a fool to let you go. A coward who chose society's expectations over the woman who owned my soul." His hand moved to cover both of hers where they rested on her belly, and she felt the babies respond to their father's touch with gentle movements that made her breath catch. "Feel that?" she whispered. "They know you." Matthias's eyes darkened with an emotion she recognized, the same desperate hunger that had consumed them both during their marriage, the same raw need that had made their last night together so devastating and beautiful. "Just like their mother knows me," he said quietly. "Just like my body knows yours." The tension between them was palpable, a living thing that made the air shimmer with possibility and pain. Despite everything, the divorce, the hurt, the months of separation, the connection between them remained unbroken, electric, undeniable. "We can't," she breathed, even as her body betrayed her, leaning into his warmth. "Too much has happened." "Has it?" His thumb traced gentle circles on her hand. "Because sitting here, feeling our children move beneath my palm, watching you fight to stay strong, it feels like coming home." Before she could respond, a sharp knock interrupted them. Dr. Martinez entered, her no-nonsense expression immediately commanding attention. "Mrs. Blackwell, we need to discuss your condition." "Ms. Hartley," Vivian corrected automatically, though the doctor's use of her former married name sent unexpected warmth through her chest. "I apologize, Ms. Hartley. Your collapse tonight was caused by severe preeclampsia. Your blood pressure is dangerously elevated, and we're seeing significant protein levels in your urine." Matthias tensed beside her, his hand tightening protectively over hers. "What does that mean for the babies?" "In normal circumstances, we deliver immediately to protect both mother and children. But at 28 weeks, the risks are substantial. Triplets born this early face serious complications, underdeveloped lungs, potential brain bleeding, digestive system issues." Vivian felt the world tilt again, her carefully maintained composure cracking. "What are our options?" "Aggressive medication to control your blood pressure, steroid injections to accelerate the baby's lung development, and complete bed rest. But I'll be honest with you, we're buying time. Maybe days, maybe weeks if we're fortunate. If your condition deteriorates further, we'll have no choice but to deliver, regardless of gestational age." The silence that followed the doctor's departure was heavy with unspoken fears and desperate hopes. "They'll be okay," Matthias said finally, his voice fierce with determination. "Whatever they need, the best doctors, experimental treatments, anything, I'll make it happen." "This isn't about money," Vivian whispered, tears threatening. "No, it's about love." He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing across her cheek with infinite tenderness. "About a father who wants to hold his children, watch them grow, teach them everything I know about surviving in this world." The tears she'd been holding back for months finally spilled over. "I was so scared, Matthias. Scared to raise 3 babies alone. Scared you wouldn't want them. Scared you'd think I was trying to trap you with them." "Trap me?" He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. "Vivian, you freed me. From the moment I saw you collapse tonight, everything else fell away, the wedding, the expectations, the life I thought I was supposed to want. None of it mattered except getting to you. But Cordelia, understood that my heart was never fully hers to begin with. His breath was warm against her lips. She deserves someone who can love her completely. I can't be that man because my soul belongs to you. The confession hung between them, raw and honest and terrifying in its vulnerability. I missed you, she admitted. Every night, every morning, every moment in between. Then let me come home, he whispered. Let me be the husband I should have been, the father our children deserve. Pause here and think about this. How many of us let pride stand between us and the people we love? If this story is hitting you right in the feels, show some love with a like, and tell me in the comments about a time you almost let pride cost you everything. Before she could respond to his plea to come home, his lips found hers, soft at first, hesitant, asking permission. Then, as she melted into him, the kiss deepened with months of separation and longing pouring into the connection. It tasted of regret and hope, of desperate love and second chances, of everything they'd lost and everything they might still save. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard, their faces still close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. The doctors said you need rest, he murmured against her lips. What I need is you, she replied honestly, her voice breaking on the admission. I've needed you every day since you walked away. Matthias closed his eyes, pain etched across his features. I never walked away from you, Viv. I walked away from us. From the possibility of this, he gestured to her belly, because I was terrified I'd fail at being a father the way I failed at being a husband. You didn't fail, I did. His voice was raw with self-recrimination. I put everything else before you. Before us. I let my father's voice in my head telling me that love was a luxury successful men couldn't afford. Vivian remembered Matthias's father all too well, Richard Blackwell, cold and calculating, who'd built the family fortune by treating every relationship as a transaction. During their marriage, she'd watched Matthias struggle against becoming the same man, seen him win some battles and lose others. Your father was wrong, she said softly. Love isn't a luxury. It's what makes success worth having. I know that now. He brought her hand to his lips, pressing gentle kisses to her knuckles. But it took losing you to learn it. It took standing at another woman's altar to realize I was marrying everything I thought I should want instead of everything I actually needed. What happened today? With Cordelia? Matthias ran his free hand through his hair, leaving it even more disheveled. When I saw you collapse, when I realized you were pregnant, Cordelia took one look at my face and knew. She said, you still love her. It wasn't a question. And what did you tell her? The truth. That I never stopped loving you. That marrying her was the biggest mistake I was about to make. He met her eyes directly. She called off the wedding herself, actually. Said she deserved better than a man whose heart belonged to someone else. Vivian felt a stab of sympathy for the other woman. I'm sorry. That must have been devastating for her. She'll be fine. Cordelia is stronger than she looks, and she's got more integrity than I gave her credit for. Matthias's thumb traced patterns on her palm. But you, Viv, why didn't you tell me sooner? About the babies? The question she'd been dreading hung between them. Vivian looked down at their joined hands, gathering courage for honesty. Because the last time I tried to talk to you about having children, you made it clear it wasn't what you wanted. And when I found out I was pregnant. She paused, remembering those early weeks of shock and terror and overwhelming joy. I was scared. Terrified, actually. 3 babies, Matthias. Not 1, but 3. When did you find out? About the triplets, I mean. At the 12-week ultrasound. I went alone because I was alone. The memory still stung. The technician kept frowning at the screen, calling in the doctor. I thought something was wrong, that I was losing them. Then she turned the monitor toward me and said, Congratulations, you're having triplets. Matthias's jaw tightened. You should have called me. And said what? Hi. I know you never wanted children and were divorced, but surprise, I'm pregnant with 3 of them. Yes. His voice rose, then he immediately lowered it, glancing toward the door. Yes, exactly that. They're my children, Vivian. I had a right to know. Rights have to be earned. She shot back, old anger flaring. You signed those divorce papers without even trying to fight for us. You had your lawyer transfer money to my account like I was some sort of business transaction you needed to close out. I thought I was doing what was best. For who? For you? because it certainly wasn't best for me. Tears she'd thought were spent started flowing again. Do you have any idea what these past months have been like? Being pregnant and alone and scared, working 2 jobs to save money for when I wouldn't be able to work anymore. Matthias went very still. 2 jobs. The gallery during the day, freelance art authentication at night. I had to build up my savings because maternity leave for 3 babies. She shrugged, trying to seem casual about what had been crushing stress. Jesus, Vivian. He looked stricken. You've been supporting yourself while carrying my children? Working yourself to exhaustion. I'm not helpless, Matthias. I don't need rescuing. Maybe not, but you shouldn't have had to do it alone. His hand tightened on hers. I should have been there. For all of it, the ultrasounds, the appointments, the midnight trips to the emergency room when you were scared something was wrong. She looked at him sharply. How did you know about the emergency room visits? A flush crept up his neck. I may have been keeping tabs on you. Making sure you were okay. Keeping tabs how? I hired a private investigator. The words came out in a rush. Just to make sure you were safe, that you had everything you needed. When he told me about the hospital visits, I almost called you a dozen times. Vivian stared at him in disbelief. You've been having me watched? Protected, he corrected quickly. The investigator was more like security, making sure nothing happened to you. That's incredibly presumptuous, and I found out about your financial situation too, he continued, clearly deciding to come clean completely. About the second job, the insurance complications, the bills piling up. I've been anonymously paying them. The room fell silent except for the steady beeping of monitors. What? Her voice was dangerously quiet. The medical bills, the insurance copays, I've been covering them through a medical foundation I set up. You never knew because you were manipulating my life from the shadows while pretending I didn't exist. Her voice rose despite her weakened state. How dare you? I was trying to take care of you. I didn't ask for your charity. They're my children too. The words exploded out of him. Even if I didn't know about them, some part of me must have sensed. I couldn't stop thinking about you, couldn't stop worrying, couldn't stop feeling like something was missing. Dr. Martinez chose that moment to return, her expression stern as she took in Vivian's elevated color and the tension crackling between them. Blood pressure is spiking, she announced after checking the monitors. I'm going to have to ask you to leave, Mr. Blackwell. The patient needs calm and rest. No, Vivian said quickly, surprising herself. He can stay. We need to finish this conversation. The doctor looked skeptical but nodded. Keep it quiet and stress-free, or I will have security remove him. After she left, they sat in charged silence for several minutes. Finally, Matthias spoke. I know I handled everything wrong. The divorce, the aftermath, finding out about the babies, all of it. But Vivian, I need you to understand something. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. I never signed the final divorce papers. Her heart stopped. What do you mean? Legally, we're still married. I kept telling my lawyer I needed more time to review the settlement terms, but the truth is I couldn't bring myself to make it official. His voice dropped to a whisper. Some part of me always hoped we'd find our way back to each other. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. We're still married? Technically, yes. The papers were drawn up, negotiated, signed by you, but never filed because I never gave final authorization. Why are you telling me this now? Because I want you to know that even when I was planning to marry someone else, even when I convinced myself I was moving on, I couldn't let you go. Not completely. Before she could process this completely, a sharp pain exploded through her abdomen, more intense than anything she'd experienced before. Her hand flew to her belly as the monitors around her bed began alarming frantically. Matthias, she gasped, gripping his hand with desperate strength. What's happening? What's wrong? The pain intensified, and suddenly she felt wetness between her legs, her water breaking in a warm rush that soaked the hospital bed. Get the doctor, she managed through gritted teeth. Something's wrong. The babies. Matthias hit the call button repeatedly while she doubled over with another contraction. Dr. Martinez burst through the door with a team of nurses, immediately assessing the situation. Blood pressure is critical, one nurse announced. 180 over 110 and climbing. Fetal heart rates are dropping. Another called out, adjusting monitors on Vivian's belly. What's happening to them? Matthias demanded, his face pale with terror. Severe preeclampsia with acute onset. We need to get her to surgery immediately, Dr. Martinez said, already moving to release the bed's brake wheels. The babies have to come out now, or we risk losing all of them. But they're only 28 weeks. Mr. Blackwell, if we don't deliver now, your wife and children will die. The NICU team is standing by, but we have to act fast. Terror flooded Vivian's system as they wheeled her toward the operating room. Through the chaos of medical personnel and urgent voices, she felt Matthias's hand in hers, her anchor in the storm. I'm scared, she admitted as they rushed down the corridor. I know, sweetheart. I know. His voice was steady despite the fear in his eyes. But you're the strongest person I know. You and our babies are going to get through this. They reached the surgical doors where they would have to separate. Matthias leaned down to kiss her forehead, his lips warm against her clammy skin. I love you, she called out as the surgical team took over. I never stopped loving you. I love you too, he shouted back, his voice breaking. All of you. Fight for us, Vivian. Fight for our family. The doors swung closed between them, leaving Matthias alone in the corridor as the woman he loved disappeared into surgery with their 3 unborn children. Children he'd only learned about hours ago. Children whose lives now hung in the balance because of complications that might have been prevented if he'd been there from the beginning. For the first time in years, Matthias Blackwell, master of the universe, controller of his own destiny, was completely powerless. All he could do was wait, and pray, and promise whatever gods might be listening that if his family survived this night, he would spend the rest of his life making up for every mistake he'd ever made. The waiting room became Matthias's purgatory. He paced the small space like a caged predator, still wearing the wrinkled wedding tuxedo that now felt like a costume from another life. The bow tie hung loose around his neck, jacket discarded on a chair, white shirt stained with Vivian's tears and his own sweat. Every minute felt like an eternity. Every sound from the corridor made his heart race with desperate hope and paralyzing fear. He'd built an empire by controlling every variable, anticipating every outcome. But here, in this sterile space that smelled of disinfectant and despair, he was completely powerless. Mr. Blackwell? A soft voice interrupted his frantic pacing. He turned to find a young chaplain, her kind eyes filled with practiced compassion. I heard about your situation. Would you like me to sit with you? I don't believe in God, Matthias said automatically, then caught himself. I don't know what I believe anymore. That's okay. Sometimes the waiting is the hardest part. You don't have to have faith to need someone to sit with you. She settled into one of the uncomfortable chairs, and after a moment, Matthias joined her. The silence was oddly comforting, someone else holding vigil with him in this liminal space between hope and heartbreak. Tell me about her, the chaplain said gently. About your wife. Ex-wife. Maybe. It's complicated. Matthias ran his hands through his hair. Her name is Vivian. She's everything I'm not. Warm where I'm cold. Open where I'm guarded. She sees beauty in things I would walk past without noticing. You love her very much. It wasn't a question, but Matthias answered anyway. More than I knew how to handle. More than I thought I deserved. His voice broke slightly. I threw it all away because I was scared. And now she's in there fighting for her life, for their lives, and it's my fault. How is it your fault? If I'd been there from the beginning, if I'd known about the pregnancy, maybe we could have prevented this. Maybe the stress wouldn't have. He couldn't finish the sentence. Mr. Blackwell, preeclampsia isn't caused by stress alone. It's a complex condition that can affect any pregnancy, especially with multiples. You can't blame yourself for a medical complication. But Matthias wasn't listening. His mind was replaying every moment of the evening, every choice that had led them here. The wedding that should never have happened. The secret that should never have been kept. The pride that had kept them apart when they should have been together. She was alone, he whispered. All those months, carrying my children, scared and working herself to exhaustion, and she was alone because I was too much of a coward to fight for what we had. The chaplain was about to respond when Dr. Martinez appeared in the doorway, still in surgical scrubs. Her expression was carefully neutral, giving nothing away. Matthias shot to his feet, his heart hammering against his ribs. How are they? Your wife is stable. The surgery went well, and her blood pressure is already improving. Relief flooded through him so powerfully his knees nearly buckled. And the babies? 3 beautiful children, 2 boys and a girl. They're small, as expected at 28 weeks, but they're fighters. Dr. Martinez's professional demeanor softened slightly. Baby A, your daughter, is 3 pounds 2 ounces. Baby B, your first son, is 3 pounds 8 ounces. Baby C, your second son, is 3 pounds even. Will they be okay? They're in the NICU now. The next 72 hours are critical, but their initial vital signs are encouraging. They're breathing on their own, which is remarkable for their gestational age. Matthias felt tears he'd been holding back for hours finally spill over. Can I see them? Can I see Vivian? She's in recovery now. Once she's fully awake and stable, you can see her. The babies. Yes, you can see them now, but Mr. Blackwell, I need to prepare you. They're very small, and they'll be connected to multiple machines. It can be overwhelming. Nothing could have prepared him for the sight that greeted him in the NICU. The unit was a symphony of beeps and whooshes, machines breathing for tiny lungs and monitoring heartbeats smaller than hummingbirds. 3 isolates stood in a row, each containing a perfect miniature human being. That's Sophia, the NICU nurse. Janet indicated the first isolate. She's your little fighter, came out crying and hasn't stopped asserting herself. Then Gabriel, he's the biggest, and already trying to roll over. And this is Lucas, he's the quiet observer, but don't let that fool you. His grip strength is incredible. Matthias approached Sophia's isolate first, his breath catching at the sight of her. She was impossibly small, her skin translucent and delicate, but her tiny chest rose and fell with determined rhythm. Dark hair crowned her perfect head, and even in sleep, her face showed a stubborn set to her jaw that reminded him of Vivian. She's beautiful, he whispered. You can touch her, Janet encouraged, showing him how to reach through the isolate's openings. Skin contact is incredibly important for preemies. It helps regulate their temperature and heart rate. The moment Matthias's finger touched Sophia's tiny hand, she grasped it with surprising strength. The connection was instant and overwhelming. This perfect being was part of him, part of Vivian, part of a love story he'd almost destroyed through his own fear and pride. Hello, sweetheart, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. I'm your daddy. I know I'm late getting here, but I'm never leaving you again. Gabriel was next, slightly bigger than his sister, but with the same determined spirit. When Matthias touched his son's hand, the baby's eyes fluttered open, blue, like his own, but with an alertness that seemed to look right through him. He's evaluating you, Janet laughed softly. Gabriel likes to size people up before he decides if he trusts them. What's the verdict, buddy? Matthias asked his son, who continued to stare at him with those serious blue eyes before apparently deciding his father was acceptable and closing his eyes again. Lucas was the smallest, but there was something peaceful about his demeanor that reminded Matthias of Vivian's quiet strength. When he touched the baby's hand, Lucas turned his head toward the touch, seeking comfort and connection. I promise you, Matthias whispered to all 3 of his children, I'll never leave you. Any of you. I'll be here for every milestone, every challenge, every moment you need me. I'll be the father you deserve, not the one I thought I had to be. They can hear you, Janet said softly. Even this young, they recognize voices. They've been listening to their parents for months. The thought that his children had been hearing Vivian talk to them, sing to them, love them while he remained oblivious, sent a fresh wave of guilt through him. She's been talking to them about me? He asked. Based on how they responded when you spoke, I'd say yes. They know your voice somehow. 2 hours later, Matthias was finally allowed to see Vivian. She was awake but groggy, her face pale against the white pillows but alive, beautifully, miraculously alive. Hey, she said softly when she saw him, her voice hoarse from the anesthesia. Hey yourself. He pulled a chair close to her bed, taking her hand in both of his. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, but grateful to be here. Her eyes searched his face. Have you seen them? I have. They're perfect, Viv. Absolutely perfect. His voice caught. Sophia has your stubborn streak already. Gabriel's got my suspicious nature. And Lucas. Lucas has your peaceful spirit. You named them. Surprise colored her voice. You named them. I found the list in your purse when I was looking for your insurance card. Gabriel, Lucas, and Sophia. Perfect names for perfect babies. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I was going to ask what you thought about the names. I had this whole conversation planned about what we'd call them. I love the names. I love that you chose them. He brought her hand to his lips. I love that you've been taking care of all of us, even when I didn't deserve it. Matthias, let me say this, please. He leaned forward, his eyes intense with emotion. I was wrong about everything. About priorities, about what success really means, about what kind of man I wanted to be. I thought building an empire would make me worthy of love, but all it did was make me too afraid to accept the love that was already mine. We were both scared, Vivian said gently. I was scared too. Scared I wasn't enough for your world. Scared I'd never measure up to your family's expectations. My family's expectations almost cost me everything that actually matters. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I want to start over, Viv. Not go back to who we were, but build something new. Something based on who we are now, what we've learned. And what have we learned? That love isn't a weakness to be managed or a distraction to be scheduled around. It's the foundation everything else is built on. He met her eyes directly. That a family isn't something you have when everything else is perfect. It's what makes everything else worth doing. Dr. Martinez chose that moment to enter with an update. Good news. All 3 babies are stable, and their respiratory function is improving faster than we expected. If this progress continues, they'll only need minimal breathing support. When can we hold them? Vivian asked eagerly. Skin-to-skin contact? Probably in a day or 2, once we're sure their temperature regulation is stable. Full holding and feeding? It depends on their individual progress, but I'm optimistic. After the doctor left, they sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, processing the magnitude of what had just happened to their lives. I have something to confess, Vivian said eventually. What? I kept all your shirts. The ones you left behind when you moved out. I told myself it was because they were expensive and I might return them. But, she blushed. I slept in them sometimes when I missed you too much to bear. Matthias felt his heart constrict with love and regret. I kept your coffee mug at the office. The one with the paint stains from your studio. I used it every morning because it was the only way I could start my day without falling apart. We're both idiots, she said with a watery laugh. Idiots who love each other, he agreed. Idiots who just became parents to 3 amazing children. Idiots who have a lot of work ahead of them. The best kind of work there is. 3 days later, Vivian was discharged but remained at the hospital around the clock, living in the family room adjacent to the NICU. Matthias had canceled all meetings, delegated every responsibility, and joined her vigil. They took turns holding vigil beside their children's isolates, learning to change diapers that seemed too small for human hands, watching for every tiny sign of progress. Look, Vivian whispered one afternoon, pointing to Gabriel's isolate. He's trying to suck his thumb. Matthias leaned closer, marveling at his son's determination to find comfort. He's going to be trouble, that one. They all are, she laughed. 3 babies, Matthias. What were we thinking? We weren't thinking. We were just loving each other. Best decision we never made, she agreed. That evening, as they sat together in the family room sharing takeout Chinese food, their first real meal together in over a year, Vivian brought up the practical questions they'd been avoiding. Where are we going to live? Your penthouse isn't exactly baby-proofed for triplets. I've been thinking about that, Matthias said carefully. There's a house in Westchester. Big yard, good schools nearby, close enough to the city for work, but far enough away for peace. I put an offer in yesterday. You bought a house without asking me. I bought a house hoping you'd want to make it a home with me, he corrected. But if you hate it, we'll find something else. Something we choose together. Can I see it first? Absolutely. The realtor is holding it until you approve. And work? I can't exactly commute to the gallery with 3 newborns. You don't have to go back to the gallery unless you want to. I mean, financially, we're fine. More than fine. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But if you want to work, if the gallery makes you happy, we'll figure out childcare. Or you could freelance from home. Or start your own gallery. Whatever you want, Viv. I want to be home with them, she admitted. At least at first. I missed so much of their beginning already, being sick and scared. I want to be present for everything else. Then that's what we'll do. If you're feeling the emotions right now, you're not alone. This is what real love looks like. Messy, complicated, but worth fighting for. Hit that subscribe button if you believe love is worth the fight, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. 6 weeks later, Gabriel, Lucas, and Sophia were finally strong enough to leave the hospital. The homecoming felt like a miracle wrapped in the chaos of car seats, diaper bags, and enough medical equipment to stock a small clinic. The house in Westchester was perfect, a sprawling colonial with a wraparound porch, mature trees, and enough space for their family to grow. The nursery Matthias had designed was even more beautiful in reality, with 3 cribs arranged to catch the morning light and a rocking chair positioned to oversee all 3 babies at once. "It's perfect," Vivian breathed as she stood in the doorway, one baby in her arms while Matthias carried the other 2. "We're home," he said simply, and for the first time in over a year, the word carried its full weight of meaning. That first night was chaos, 3 babies with different sleep schedules, feeding times that seemed to overlap constantly, and the overwhelming responsibility of keeping 3 tiny humans alive and thriving. "We're never going to sleep again," Vivian groaned at 3 a.m. as Sophia demanded another feeding, while Gabriel cried, and Lucas watched it all with his serious eyes. "Probably not," Matthias agreed, expertly changing Gabriel's diaper while bouncing him gently. "But look at them, Viv. Look at what we made." She looked, really looked, at their 3 perfect children and felt her heart expand beyond what she'd thought possible. "Worth every sleepless night," she agreed. "Worth everything," Matthias said, leaning over to kiss her temple as they worked together in the pre-dawn darkness, partners finally in every sense of the word. Months passed in a blur of feedings and diaper changes, first smiles and rolling over, teething and sleep training. Matthias proved to be a natural father, patient and gentle in ways that surprised them both. He cut back his work schedule dramatically, insisting that his assistant handle anything that wasn't absolutely critical. "The company can survive without my constant attention," he told his shocked board of directors. "My family can't." One evening, as they sat on the porch watching Gabriel attempt to crawl, while Sophia chewed contentedly on her favorite toy and Lucas observed everything with his characteristic seriousness, Vivian brought up something that had been on her mind. "We should probably make it official," she said quietly. "Make what official?" "The marriage. I mean, we never actually divorced, but we also never really got back together. We're in this strange legal limbo." Matthias considered this. "What do you want to do?" "I want to marry you again," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "Not because of the babies or the house or any practical reason. Because I choose you. Because even after everything we've been through, I still choose you. Even though I'm probably going to make more mistakes. Even though we're both going to make mistakes. But we'll make them together this time. Then marry me, Vivian Hartley," he said, pulling her close as their children played safely at their feet. "Marry me again, for all the right reasons this time." "Yes," she laughed, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." 6 months later, they had a small ceremony in their backyard, surrounded by family and friends and 3 babies who slept peacefully through their parents' vows. This time, when Matthias promised to love and cherish her in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, he understood the full weight of those words. This time, when Vivian promised to be his partner in all things, she knew what true partnership looked like. This time, when they kissed to seal their commitment, 3 perfect children, living proof of their love, witnessed the beginning of their real life together. Sometimes our greatest mistakes become our greatest blessings. Matthias learned that success without love is just expensive emptiness. Vivian discovered that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the doorway to everything we truly want. Their story teaches us that it's never too late to choose love over pride, family over fortune, and connection over control. What choice will you make today? Will you let pride keep you from the love you deserve? If this story inspired you to choose love, show it with a like, subscribe for more life-changing stories, and share this with someone who needs to remember that love always wins.